Good afternoon, Burke County. I am Scott Mulwee. I'm Chairman of the Burke County Commissioners. This is Margaret Pierce, our Finance Director. You saw us on the first part of our budget series. This is the second of our two-part series. We talked about process on the budget during the first video. This one we want to get a little bit more into numbers. But I was amiss in saying in that first video that during the budget process we do hold a public hearing. Margaret reminded me that after we shot the first video, so I did want to say that because there is not only input from our department heads and staff and employees, but we get public input as well. So there's that opportunity, so I wanted to clarify that. But this series is going to be more on numbers and what are our biggest budget drivers. And I think most people will not be surprised what those are, but moving forward and what they have been pretty consistent. So when I get asked why is the budget expanding as much as it has, well, because one, inflation, but two, we have to staff the sheriffs and DSS. So I'm gonna step aside and let you talk about what those budget drivers mean to our overall budget and how much it's expanded in the last 10 years.
Okay. So this year for fiscal year 22-23, we had requests of a little over $140 million throughout the budget, which is quite a bit, up about $16 million from what we currently are budgeted in 21-22 fiscal year. The commissioners ended up with an approved budget of roughly $124 million. So a lot of cuts were made through the process. A lot of things have to be evaluated and looked at. There were 16 new positions in this budget, which is significant, but it's necessary to provide the services that we'd like to for our citizens. We look at our staffing as one of our critical expenses each year. There are controllable costs, and there are other costs such as that we cannot control, what we're mandated by the state to pay for retirement. That went up 1.25% this year. That's not something we can cut. We are required to do that. The commissioners asked us to look at a cost of living, particularly with inflation running as high as it is. Normally those would be fairly close. We would be able to do cost of living at an inflation rate, but unfortunately inflation was so high this year, running when we were doing budget at 8%, we weren't able to do that, but the commissioners did approve a 4% cost of living, and we are very appreciative and for that, but that is a significant amount of money for the size of budget we have. We have revenue drivers in our budget that we look at that give us a backbone of how much expense we can put in. Those two big ones are property taxes, which runs about $50 million a year, plus your fire taxes run about $4.5 million. And then you've got sales tax. And sales tax is where everybody's out shopping, and everything you buy usually has sales tax on it, and the county receives a portion of those taxes to use for funding programs here in the county.
Please buy in Burke.
It does matter where you buy it.
Yes, it does.
We receive the sales taxes only for things that are spent here in Burke. If you buy from Amazon, it's where it gets delivered. So hopefully everybody's having them delivered to their home here in Burke. So when you look at the where those fall, we start doing estimates and trying to forecast and hope we can look in a crystal ball and determine what sales are going to be and whether they're going up or down and what that might, that's one of our biggest changes. Property tax is fairly level or predictable because we know the values of the properties in a fairly decent narrow window, so we can predict that, but not sales tax as well.
Sure.
So then we start looking at expenses, and we have three major areas. All are critical, and those departments that really are your big drivers would be your Department of Social Services. That's just over $19 million for our budget. And then we look at the Sheriff's Office, and that is about $12 million to $14 million, depending on how things fall out on vehicles and replacements. And then our school system. The support that the Burke County Commissioners give to the public school system is just over $16 million as well. So those three pieces are quite a bit of the $100 million roughly budget for the general fund there.
And that, and for those of you that don't know, we work with our closely not only with our immediate departments, but we meet with our school board friends on their chair and vice chair on a quarterly basis, and we exchange information regularly so we can both anticipate what our budgets are going to be looking like in the upcoming year. I happen to be a trustee at the college. That's also monies that we give the college, which I think generally runs 2.6 to 2.8 million roughly per year. And so we work with them. So, some of this we can anticipate, but sometimes infrastructure needs supersede things that we don't anticipate. And so our budget can't always account for the unexpected. And so, so it's somewhat fluid, somewhat moving, but we do have, when you have a history, you can kind of figure out what we're going to need in the upcoming year. And as we mentioned, we didn't move property tax this year, so we didn't have to adjust that from 69.5 cents. One thing we've done in the past, and I mentioned in the first video, we've been very prudent fiscally, and so we've been able to put back money in our rainy day fund, much like you do at home in your checking or savings. But instead of, sometimes you have to hit that checking and savings, and that's what we're having to do this year to balance our budget. But that happens sometimes, so we didn't have to increase the tax burden. So lots of moving parts. One thing, we're very proud of, we just finished our second cycle of the pay study. And I'm going to let you mention, maybe discuss that just very briefly, what that pay study looks like and what we've done over the last 6 years.
So about 6 years ago, the commissioners worked with the Human Resource Department on trying to identify some needs for employees and retention and what we needed to do to take care of staff. And part of that, what came to light was the pay study hadn't been looked at, the pay plan, the levels where we hire people hadn't been looked at in a long time. So the commissioners made the choice to hire a firm to go in and look, and it was split into thirds because to do that at one lump can be very, very expensive. So 1/3 of the staff has been looked at each year, and we did that for 3 years. Then we came back and did a second cycle of the same process to try to make sure our people are at a good market rate for surrounding counties and counties our size. We don't just look at surrounding, we also look at counties our size and has the same needs to try to determine what those pays should be. And the commissioners have very appreciative again, they have each year approved those increases so that we were able to go with what the consultants felt like was the appropriate rates, and we moved those within the pay study. And we'll be looking at, now that we've done that for 2 cycles, we feel like we've done a better job of trying to get our staff where they need to be. There'll always be market changes and hot button positions. During the pandemic, medical positions, emergency medical services, ambulance drivers, our public health nurses and other public health staff were key. Law enforcement has been a challenging field for some time because of the safety and the critical nature of what they do and the danger in what they do. So we definitely try to focus on certain areas of the staffing a little bit more often than others, just because of the need to make sure we can hire for those positions.
Okay. Well, I think that pretty much covers. Is there anything else we can think about? Because I think we got the biggest cost drivers. We don't want these videos to last too long, so everybody will stay tuned in. But what I would say is, if anybody that watches this has questions about county government, reach out to us. If you've got ideas on what we need to present next time, I'm looking at bringing in different department heads and different positions to talk about things that are timely and current. And like I said, I'd like suggestions from the public. And so on behalf of your Burke County Board of Commissioners, and I would like to thank Margaret, who's done a fantastic job today in her explanation and trying to keep it something that is very difficult and to keep it very simple. And so please comment with any suggestions, and we all hope all of you have a great day. Thank you.